I mean, when I first saw it, on Twitter, you had me fooled, actually, I have to say. Because, I mean, I've come across quite a lot of people and argue with people with those views. I mean, I wondered, in your case, did you know many Titanias?
Yeah, loads. It's funny you say that, though, because a lot of the critics of it, the people who don't like it, will say, well, it's nothing like real life. This is a straw man, that you're satirising someone that doesn't exist. I'm afraid that's not true. And that's very much wishful thinking on their part. But she's certainly at the extreme end. Like, she's certainly saying the things that most people wouldn't say. But the whole woke movement is a minority. It's a very vocal, powerful minority. That's why it deserves to be satirised.
Yes, exactly. With this point, I think you've made this point before that, it's a question of punching up, isn't it? These people, give us a bit of an idea of her profile. I mean, she's an upper middle class girl, isn't she, right? So basically she's privileged.
Yes.
And yet thinks of herself as a victim.
Yeah.
That's right, isn't it?
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And we all know who I'm talking about. We all know those kinds of people. It's so recognisable. A lot of them are in the media or on Twitter, of course, very vocal on Twitter. I got into an argument. Someone got very angry with me, a columnist from The Guardian, surprise, surprise. And she sent a message saying, well, you're talking about people that don't exist. I've worked at The Guardian. There's no wealthy feminists who constantly go on about being victims. And I said, no, there really are. And if you work at The Guardian, you probably should know. In fact, I suspect she's one of them. And then she came back to me saying, no, unless you name who they are. And I didn't want to name who I was talking about because I deliberately didn't want to make it personal. But she kept pushing. And so I said, okay, there's this person, this person, this person, this person. I listed them. And then she said, well, thank you for that list of the women you hate. You're clearly a misogynist. And that in of itself is exactly why I created Titania. That kind of response. I have no argument left. I'm just going to call you a misogynist. That's all I've got. All I've got is the ad hominem attacks, which is funny to me. That's funny to me. That was hilarious. That was, she couldn't have proved my point better. And I think, because I used to teach critical thinking, and I think we have to get back. That people don't understand that as soon as you throw an insult, you've lost. That's it. Game over. Your argument's gone. And I just wish we could get back to that. But Titania is that sort. So Titania will call anyone who disagrees with her a misogynist, fascist often, Nazi, racist, anything, just anything, because she knows that those epithets will stick.
I've actually got a couple here. This one here, first of all, about comedy, right? Yeah. I think she says in one of her tweets, if you find yourself laughing at comedy, it's probably not sufficiently progressive. Well, that to me it's entirely true in the sense that, if you think now a lot of comedy is made up of audiences of people laughing to show they're on side politically, wouldn't you say? You're a comic. You are in clubs, you do stand up, don't you? Or
yes, I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Would you say that that's correct? That is that's exactly on the money.
That's exactly right, because I think this is something I really hate when I go and see comedy, is if I get a sense that the audience are laughing because they endorse the views that are being expressed, rather than laughing because they find it funny. And I'm guilty of it myself. I think all comedians, if they're honest about this. Sometimes when I've done a joke, say I've mocked Theresa May, very easy target, and then people have laughed. And particularly when I was touring on the Jonathan Pye tour and I was doing the support slot, I had to think, now, is that joke really good enough? Or are they laughing because they just hate Theresa May? And if it's the latter, then it's weak comedy. So you have to go back and rethink it. What I really loved, though, is on that tour, I was doing a pro-Brexit set to a room full of people, often big rooms of 3,000 people, where virtually no one would have voted leave, or very few, So therefore, I had to make sure the material was good, because they won't laugh at someone who supports Brexit unless it's even better. It has to be really, really good. So that, in a sense, is a good thing. But yes, I always mistrust. You see, the people who criticise Bernard Manning and sort of old school comics, well, the main criticism, because actually he was a very good comic. Politically, I couldn't be more opposed to him. And of course, he was a racist. He admitted to being a racist, and I deplore that. But in terms of the craft, he was excellent. But a lot of the people laughing in those old clips, you can see what they're doing is they're laughing because they just agree with the unpleasantness of the views. But that, to me, is no different than what we see today, which is people from the left, comedians from the left, making people laugh, and people are laughing because they agree. The material isn't necessarily particularly strong and doesn't need to be. But those two camps are the same. So when these people on the left now criticise the likes of Manning and the old Working Men's Club comics, but they are guilty of exactly the same lack of artistry sometimes.
Yes, I've got one here as well. I'm not going to, go on with loads of quotes for you because you must get tired of it. But, I think This one I loved. You can imagine. If you only have sex with people you find attractive, you might want to ask yourself why you're such a superficial bigot. Now, I just think, I just think that I could imagine people saying that.
No, but they sort of have. Yeah. There've been a number of articles where people have said, if you're online Tinder or on Grindr or whatever, those sort of dating apps, and if you are eliminating people based on certain characteristics, if you don't sleep with people of colour, you're racist.
Yes,
if you don't,
yes.
It's like, you don't need to prove you're not racist by having sex with people. Like that people are actually saying this stuff.
Yes.
We all have proclivities. Are you misogynist if you're gay, a gay man? Are gay men misogynist because they won't sleep with women? You don't show you like someone and approve of someone by having sex with them, do you? That would be an odd world.
But the thing is, it's so spot on. I mean,
it's slightly exaggerated, isn't it? So
it's slightly, of course, it's absurd, but at the same time, it's got that kernel of truth. You could think, I could imagine that, a time in the future where actually that might be the case, and in fact you are called this because, for example, you don't fancy whatever.
This is the problem, is that I think, unfortunately, often I end up anticipating what people actually say, and that really scares me. And it's happened a number of times. I mean, I remember before Christmas, at Christmas it was, I did a thing about the Queen's speech and what she should have said.
Yes.
And she should have said that Harry and Meghan will raise their child as gender neutral. And then there was a story about Meghan floating the idea of raising her child as gender neutral, and that was a couple of months later, I thought. And then there was the tweet about Mary Poppins. I did a screenshot from Mary Poppins where she's got the soot on her face, and Titania said, this is blackface, this is racist. But Mary Poppins is racist. And then lo and behold, New York Times in February says exactly the same thing. 4 months later, comes out and says...
I remember the story. I didn't know really.
I tweeted about it 4 months before, saying exactly the same thing, right? And so that I should be pleased about that, because it makes me out to be a kind of prophet, sort of a messiah kind of figure, which is really good for the ego. But actually, it's really worrying and scary when reality imitates satire.